In this project, I'm going to replace the overhead lights in our dinette area above the dinette table with something a little more fashionable. We never use these lights anyway because we have sufficient overhead lighting in the main cabin anyway, so maybe we've used these once or twice in the whole time we've owned this. And we just bought a standard 120 volt fixture here that has this little glass globe that goes on top of that. And I mean, that's nice enough, I suppose. But my wife has a preference to these little wire cages that almost match perfectly as far as the texture and the color. And you just have a little ring that goes in here. And you essentially just tighten them down. And I bought these things for about 10 bucks a piece at my local home store. And the reason I bought these and then I'm going to throw away this glass globe is because it was actually cheaper to buy this than it would be to buy all the parts. And what made this whole project possible are these vintage looking light bulbs. They're called Edison bulbs or vintage bulbs. And if you go to the home store, you're going to find these in 120 volts only. But I was lucky to find 12 volt versions online, and these are LEDs. So they are pretty cool for LED bulbs. And it says right on here 12 volts. And by the way, these are 6 watt bulbs, and you can probably find a lower wattage. And they just simply screw in here like this. So I bought this little crossbar, and that should allow me to install this without doing any screws in the wood. And just for demonstration, I have a 12 volt power supply. And so we're going to turn the power supply on. And you'll see that this is really quite bright. There is kind of a misconception that anytime somebody talks about dimming LEDs, somebody comes up with the phrase, well, not all LEDs can be dimmed. Most of the LEDs, they just have a current limiting resistor in them. And if so, those LEDs can be dimmed. And the problem you run into with a dimmer, in fact, I should probably do a video just on LED dimmers. You'll find is that many of the dimmers are designed for either incandescent or halogen bulbs, and they're not really designed for LEDs, so they don't really work that well with them. But there are dimmers that are specifically designed for LEDs, or at least designed to work with LEDs along with incandescent and halogen bulbs. And that's the one you want to get. So for now, what I'm going to do is I've got a on-off-on switch, and this is actually a single pole double throw. And this is a direct replacement for the switch bezel that's in the RV now. So you just pop the bezel off, and you pop the switch off, and you put this one in, put the bezel back on. And this has an on at the bottom, off in the center, and on at the top. Let's face it, how are you going to use a dimmer? Most people use a dimmer either one or two ways. It's either bright or fully dim, right? Because you either want light or you want mood lighting. Well, I can do the same thing here. I've got a 470 ohm resistor, and when I turn it on, it's very dim. So that's the mood lighting. So I'm going to hook up this switch, and it's just going to be a simple process that in one position you'll get full brightness, and in the other position you'll get this mood lighting. This is a 1/2 watt resistor, and it does get a little warm, so I've got some resistors on order that should take care of that issue. And also I've got 2 bulbs, and I only have one connected, and I'll have to select a resistor value appropriate for the 2 bulbs to work together. And on my webpage I will post a chart showing the various resistor sizes and bulb wattages, so you can select a proper resistor if you want to go that way. This does look kind of like a mess, doesn't it? Well, I've been running this for 24 hours now because I just want to burn in the LEDs a little bit. And plus I want to see how hot the resistor gets. I can measure the temperature, and I'm not quite 70 degrees, which is good because I'm going to be putting this inside the wall. And if you remember when I had a 1/2 watt resistor, it was getting a little warm. Well, this is a 5 watt resistor, and it's not getting warm at all. So I think we're fine in that regard. And we're measuring 9 volts across the resistor, and we're measuring about 40 milliamperes, which means that it's about 400 milliwatts. So this 5 watt resistor is actually 10 times what you really need. That's why it's not hot. One comment that I get occasionally is, how do you remove these puck lights? And they have several different sizes. And basically what you do is you just pull down on them. And they're generally spring-loaded. And you got to be a little careful because you can do just like I did and smack your finger with them. And these are basically just spring-loaded. And they'll just come out just like that. Well, one thing I end up doing is drilling holes in this part anyway, which I didn't want to originally do. However, they're close enough that if I ever replace this, this will cover it up. And actually what I end up doing is putting a couple washers underneath there, so now it's laying flat. It looks much better. And it should go without saying that when you put a screw in that close, you really need to put a pilot hole in there, or you will crack the wood. And also filled a glue syringe with some Boat Life adhesive caulk. It's polyurethane. And I just went around here a little bit and put a dab on the fixture on the bulb so the stuff wouldn't fall off as we're going down the road. And since it's LED, probably never have to replace it anyway. Actually, I like these 3M Scotch Lock crimps really well, these 3-way ones. And don't forget to put a couple little lock washers on these little things, or else you'll find them in the floor when you get to your destination. And we have mounting tabs on there, so all we do is just take the screwdriver and just kind of push it down to release these mounting tabs, and then this will come right out. Or you could buy a whole switch with this bezel, but it's about $5 more. And here's a reworked switch. And the source comes in here to the center, and then when it switches one way, it goes directly back out to the lights, and then when the switch is flipped the other way, it actually goes through the resistor, then jumps over to this wire into the lights. And here's a schematic of the simple circuit for the LEDs and the dimmer. And there we go, the project is finished. So now we'll try the lights, and that's fully bright. And that's in the dim setting or the mood setting. And of course, we're at daylight now, but at nighttime it'll show up pretty good.